joining us today for another episode of What's Your Why Wednesday. Today, I have the honor and privilege of having a fabulous lady here, Miss Gay Veale. She is a mortgage originator at Epic Lending. Gay, thank you so much for joining us. And I have to just preface this with, Gay and I had the opportunity of spending some time together when we were out in Vegas at AIM-Fuse back in September, I believe that was. And after hearing her story and her passion for what we do in this industry, I just knew we had to have her on to share that with all of you. So Gay, you know, most of us stumbled into this industry by accident, but we stay in this industry because it's tied to our personal and professional why. So at this moment, I would love to hear, what is your why?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. It's, an incredible honor for me to spend some time with you today. And it was fantastic chatting with you at Fuse and getting to know a little bit about you as well. And so, so my why really comes down to, so let me just give you just a kind of a quick background on me and get like how I got here. So I was in, I came right out of high school into the Air Force, and I was going to just stay in for a few years, get out, get some money for school, go to college, live happily ever after in life. And that just didn't happen. I ended up staying in the Air Force for 30 years and retired. And I know it's crazy. Every time I hear myself say it, I'm just like, what? Like,
where did 30 years go?
It just went poof like that. I really loved it. I had so much fun doing it. It was really fantastic and on many, many levels. And so I retired in 2018, and I was working for a defense contractor right after I retired. And the defense contractor was great. Don't get me wrong. Like I made wonderful money, and the mission was very noble. I worked for the Missile Defense Agency, which, is responsible for, essentially the protection of North America and our allies. And like I said, it was a really incredible mission, but the job that I did was in IT, and I wasn't very connected with people. And I really just felt like I didn't have this sense of purpose anymore, because I'm a very, very much a people person, a connection person. I like to connect on a one-on-one level. And I didn't have the opportunity to do that in that job. And so my girlfriend, who I've known for many years, was stationed with her and her husband in a couple of different assignments, was a loan officer. And she said, you should just come do this job. I think you'd love it. You have a huge veteran network. You'd be able to help a lot of veterans. And I think that it would help you, feel that sense of purpose that you've been longing for. And, this was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, we had just shut down when she and I chatted about that. And I had just gotten a promotion in the job. So it took me a little while to get there. So I got a promotion on my other job, right? And so it took me a little while to kind of finally take that leap, because I was really scared. When you go from a guaranteed paycheck for 30 years, you roll right into a job where you're making really good money. To go from that to full commission, super scary.
Yeah.
And so it took me a little while to come to terms with, like, everything's going to be okay, even if you don't do well at this. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. And so I finally, it was probably about 7 or 8 months later, so it was from March to November, whatever that works out to be, like 8 months or something like that. I finally decided to, take the test and go get it done. And actually yesterday was my 2-year mark in the business. And yes, thank you. And sure enough, it didn't take long for me to really feel that sense of connection and that sense of purpose. And, I was very fortunate when I first started. We were in the middle of the refi boom. and people were just clamoring to get those rates down. And when you tell somebody that their payment is going to drop by like $300 or $400 a month, you are a hero.
Yeah, I was going to say they're bowing down. Thank you.
Yes. And so, you know, and the vast majority of these people were veterans, and they were my friends or my family. And it really did. I mean, I just instantly fell in love with it. And so that's why I stay. I love that connection that I have with people, and I love, you know, getting to help people. And don't get me wrong, I mean, you know, we get a paycheck, right? It's not like I'm doing it for free. There's a cost associated with it, if you will. I mean, you know, not typically directly to the client, but nonetheless, you know, I mean, I'm not, you know, I do get a paycheck, so don't get me wrong here, but you know, I sleep pretty darn good at night knowing that, you know, I work for a company that doesn't rip people off, doesn't charge junk fees and nonsense like that. And so, yeah, it's just, I love it. It's amazing.
It is very interesting, right? So when I think of your background, right? So you have 30 years of military, which is the most structure you're going to have, right? That is literally like follow the rules step by step. Okay. Then you went, okay, you're outside of the military, but you're in the government world. Okay, so now you're in government. Now I have to admit, I mean, I've been in mortgage my entire career, and words that you associate to the mortgage industry are things like chaos, like being very chaotic, right? So I'm trying to like almost put myself into your shoes of you came in during a very chaotic time, between it being a global pandemic, being the rates the lowest we've ever seen in our entire ever, and then having to work through working with lenders during a time of very long turn times and trying to figure out how to keep everyone happy and communicated and satisfied. I'd love to hear what that was like, jumping into the mortgage industry where you were all about, okay, follow the steps and all of that. You came in during the most chaotic time of our industry. So what was that like when you first started out with us?
Yeah, so one of the things that, you know, when you talk about the structure and organization in the military, there is a lot of truth to that. But there is also a very chaotic side as well. And so, and I'll get to that in a minute, because I think that helped me out. But one of the very structured side of the house in the military is the training side. And that was one thing that I found to be generally very lacking in this industry. And so, and because it was so chaotic when I came in, there wasn't really anybody to help train me. I mean, I would get little bits from here, you know, bits and pieces here and there from different people, but I didn't really have, like, you know, there wasn't a training plan, which I'm that's that structure that I'm really used to. So there were some times in the very beginning where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. Like, especially if there was a unique scenario thrown at me, you know, if I felt like I couldn't get help, there was a few times I just felt like I was floundering, and it was, man, I got to give a lot of credit to my husband, because he listened to me kind of whine and complain, you know.
Oh yeah, those husbands are great. They have to handle all of that. Yes.
Yeah, he was awesome, you know. You know, so it was chaotic in that regard. I mean, I really did, you know, want that. You know, I wanted like a step-by-step guide, and they just don't exist. And at least not that I found anyway. So
I haven't found it either.
Okay. So, and I mean, I'm not trying to talk bad about the company or anything like that. I mean, because I don't think that it's company specific.
I don't think it is. I think as an industry, I mean, listen, some places have some things that are better than others. So there's certainly variation. But as a collective whole, as an industry, it is something that is lacking. So no, you're certainly not speaking out of school at all.
Well, yeah. So, and well, that's good to know for sure. So, but what I will say is, you know, one of the things that I was very good at, you know, because of the military, is the ability to just adapt and to go find things on your own. Like, you know, I can't tell you how many times in my military career that if I couldn't figure something out on my own, like really quickly, and just work through it, the mission would have failed. And
Right.
so, in that regard, yes, we are very structured. There's tons and tons of rules and regulations and lots of black and white in the military. But, when you stick through it and you've been in it for a very long time, one of the very important life skills in general that you pick up is how to just adapt. I mean, it's one of the things we say, adapt and overcome. We say that all the time in the military. Hey, you know what? Like, yeah, there's no rules for this, adapt and overcome. And when I think about, some operations that we get like thrust into really quickly in the military, sometimes you have these playbooks that you go by, but sometimes this conflict over here doesn't fit that scenario perfectly. And you literally have to just make things up on the fly. And so I think that was very helpful in that chaotic period when I first came into the industry. And it's so funny because I say that when I first came into the industry, like it was like eons ago.
It was like
literally like
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those 2 years have been night and day. So when you say that, I mean, there's two periods of time that people will always reference in the mortgage industry for the next 30 years. It will be the mortgage meltdown when the subprime crash happened, and it will be during the pandemic. Those two times will be, oh, were you here during that time? Oh, did you come in during? I mean, those are just going to be references that we will always make, in for a very long time. So yes, but it was, and I love that. Adapt and overcome. I love that. All right. So Gay, now that you're in the industry, you're doing this for a couple of years, my most favorite part of having these conversations with our mortgage professionals is I want to hear a story. I know you have tons of them, but I want you to pick out one of those ones that just really resonated with your heart. One of those moments where you were like, wow, this is why I know I made the right choice to come into the mortgage industry because of the impact that I can have on helping others. Can you please share one of those with us?
Sure. So it wasn't very long after I was licensed, again, big refi time. And a friend of mine, actually my hairstylist, came to me and she said, hey, her husband's a veteran. I had just done a cash out refi for them. And, they wanted to buy a house, an investment property with cash, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and so they had a friend who was in the middle of a divorce. And he was a veteran, and I guess he had called a couple of other lenders and they weren't able to help. And she said, call Gay, give her a call, see if she can help. And so this guy calls me up. He's a veteran. He'd never used his VA home loan, was in the middle of a divorce. The divorce decree stated that he had to refinance to get his wife off of the loan. And if he couldn't, and buy her out a portion of the split assets between them.
Right.
And also, if he couldn't qualify, that he would have to sell the home in order for her to buy her out. Yes. I mean, this was very specifically spelled out in the divorce decree. To add to that, he was on temporary disability, about to hopefully switch to permanent disability from the Colorado Springs Police Department after a really significant injury on the job. Mm. And so here's this guy who's like already going through a divorce. His job is basically over now.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to figure out how in the world am I going to make this work? And so, it had to be a cash out because he had to get the assets in order to pay her off. And so it was a pretty complex loan. And part of it was that he needed a little bit more income. And fortunately, we were able to get kind of in the 11th hour, the confirmation that he was flipping to permanent disability. Because right. When it was just temporary, it was a little bit more difficult, right, on counting that income. But when it flipped to permanent, and I'm telling you, it was like this close.
Seconds. Yes, you were in the final. Yeah.
Yes. And so we finally were able to get it done. And if we would have been in any other rate environment, it probably wouldn't have worked for him too. He was already paying off debt with some of the proceeds in order, you know what I mean? Like there was all sorts of stuff going on there, right? And so it was that relief, and that there was this moment where he was like, oh my God, everything's going to be okay, that I am getting choked up.
Yeah.
That I was just like,
I can just picture it. I can picture this poor man with like everything on his shoulders, right? And he's feeling like I've lost, you know, my marriage is lost, my job is lost.
Yep.
Now, what if I have to sell my home, you know, that he had been in,
Yes.
right? And like you're all that loss. And then here you are, hope, your hope, right? And then you were able to give him that peace of mind and take that weight off of him. Wow. That's incredible.
It really was. It really was. And that's when I was like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, hooked. You know, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, if I can do this for one person, you know, like how many people can I do this for in different situations? And I have had other situations come up where it's like, you know, you work hard to find a way to make something work. I mean, I had another, I know you only asked for one, but I had one other story where I had somebody came to me and they were trying to use their projected disability pay. And in general, you normally can't do that. But there, you know, I managed to find a little bit of a loophole where this particular person had their DD-214, which is the separation document that you get from the military that designates what your characterization of service is. That, you know, I don't want to go into great detail, but at the end of the day, because he had that before he separated, I was able to convince the underwriter that that was the only caveat in the letter for the disability pay that was really kind of holding up why they couldn't use it. And they allowed me to use it. And we, you know, I rescued this loan, and the veteran was like over the moon, excited. The agent was excited. And so, I mean, and I don't want to say countless stories, but I have enough stories like that.
And it's early. You're early in your career in the mortgage industry. So even to have countless stories, I mean, is incredible. But that leads me to my final question. So you jumped in during that crazy, one of the busiest times in the mortgage industry. And of course, cycles change, rate environments change, up, down, in, out, you know, all that kind of stuff. So now here you are in a different cycle of the mortgage industry. I'd love to hear, you know, what would be your advice? What are some of the things that you learned during this coming in during that time, and the lessons that you've learned now that you're coming into another season within the mortgage industry? What are some things that you would recommend to others? Some tips, some tricks of make sure you do this, or this is what I've learned to help guide through our industry. At the end of the day, number one, it will always be here. Number two, it will always be needed. And there will always be an opportunity for you to be successful, for all of us to be successful. But it will have variations of ups and downs. So what would be a few pieces of advice from you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that you said is always a part of, you know, the advice I give anybody who's thinking about coming into this industry. And that is that, you know, shelter is a basic need of life. And that will always be the case. And so, you know, no matter what the rate environment is, no matter what the, you know, competition is out there as far as, you know, are we in a buyer's market, a seller's market? You know, there's always going to be, it's not like, you know, rates went up to 7 or 8% and people stopped buying homes. You know, that it just didn't happen. You know, certainly we're not seeing the traffic that we saw, you know, 6-8 months ago, but nonetheless, you know, people still need shelter. It's just a basic need of life. So that's always one thing that I, you know, share with people and try to remind people that, you know, who might be feeling down is like, listen, this isn't, you know, that whatever you're feeling in this industry is fleeting, right? Even the good times.
Right.
And so, you know what I mean? But what I would say, like on a more personal level, is my advice to anybody getting into this industry is to always be authentic. Always show vulnerabilities. Always, you know, don't be afraid to show those vulnerabilities. Don't be afraid to show what your personality is. don't, you know, I have people say to me when I first started this industry that, you know, you wear too much of the weight of the file on your shoulder, right, of the transaction, and you're not going to last like that. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it any other way.
Right.
Like every single loan I do is deeply personal to me.
It's a family. It's a family.
It is. It is. I actually just reached out to one of my clients a couple of days ago, and she was, it's because of her job in the military. I had a question for her. She works in the finance department, so I'm like, she might know how this works, right? I need this document for another borrower. She's like, oh, I just started maternity leave, and I was like, oh my God, congratulations! And I totally forgot to ask her the question. I was just so excited about the baby, and I was like, oh my God, can I come see him? And you know, I mean, it's legitimately personal to me. And so like I said, I always say, just be your authentic self. Like, don't worry about sales. Like for me, I don't, you know, I don't pay for leads. I don't, you know, do any of that nonsense. I just let my personality and my compassion and passion for this job and for helping people be my guiding principle. And that has served me very well. And I highly recommend that to everybody. Don't come in here like sales. Just come in here and be authentic, and things will just fall into place naturally.
No one ever wants to be sold. I don't care what it is. You know, I don't care what it is that no one wants to feel or be sold. So I think your advice is beautiful, because number one, you're saying be your authentic self, and you won't always have all the answers. You won't always know everything, right? And that's okay too. You could be vulnerable, and you could say, you know what, that's a great one. You're going to reach out, and you're going to call that person in the finance department to get some advice. And you're going to get with someone, a teammate that can help you with that. But at the end of the day, you just have to care. When you care about the people and the families that you are helping, it'll always, like you said, it's your guiding light. That's your guiding principle. And you will always be okay, regardless of what the interest rates are, regardless of what's happening out there. There will always be a need, and there will always be a need for people that care, that truly want to help, whether it's our veterans or other borrowers that we're families that we're helping. So Gay, thank you so much for all of your insights and everything you do. I am so happy that you joined the mortgage industry, because we certainly are better for it with having you part of it. And we truly appreciate you sharing your why with all of us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me today.
Take care.